You have questions? We have answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box with your host, Miss Lindsay Schiss.
Welcome back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box, where we are not afraid of anything, so ask away. Today I have with me Kathy Kinghorn, who's a partner at Therapy Utah and a mentor and friend of mine and an awesome therapist. So Kathy, thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here.
So today we're talking about freeze, right? If we think of those different responses, flight, fight, or freeze, we're going to be talking about freeze. We have a listener question who brought up the freeze response, and she wants some answers about that. So I'll just launch right into the question, and then Kathy will get started. So here's the question. How do I cultivate a sense of safety and presence in my body if I'm trapped in the freeze response as a result of CPTSD, which is complex PTSD? And what are some of the coping skills and how do I develop them so I can stay present in my life and gain some sense of agency? So let's just break down this question. First of all, Kathy, can you tell us the difference? People I think are familiar with PTSD. That's thrown around a lot. What is the difference between PTSD and complex PTSD?
Well, first, what a great question, because so many are afflicted by this particular diagnosis. Complex PTSD is trauma over time. So that could be childhood trauma where you lived in a violent neighborhood, where going to school was extremely stressful. It could be childhood sexual abuse. It could be being an adult and all of a sudden find yourself being a refugee. It's trauma over time versus PTSD can be a car accident. It can be things that are one-off events that trigger a really strong response in you. So the complexity of it is that because it's happened over time, it has a far-reaching impact on our system.
Got it. Okay, that's a helpful way to distinguish PTSD from CPTSD. So it's complex because it's not just one event, but it's events over time, right? Does it need to be the same event or can it be differing events?
It can certainly be different events. So you may find yourself living in one lifestyle, and then a lot of events happen. We all know right now that finances for families are challenging at times. And so you might find yourself all of a sudden trying to find an RV for your family to live in. And that's traumatic. Just that change in environment is traumatic. And then it could be going to a new school and maybe not having any skills to meet friends, or the demographic is such that you've all of a sudden become a minority, or you're just confused by what circumstances are going on because you're not getting enough information. So it can certainly be a combination of traumatic events, or it could be the same traumatic event over time. The same individual in your life that has access to you sexually abuses you from the time you're 4 till the time you're 11.
Okay, that's really helpful to understand that distinction. So this listener, it sounds like she has had some issues with her responses to PTSD, CPTSD, right? And in particularly, it's the freeze response. So can you tell us, just explain the freeze response first?
Okay, so the freeze response is the reaction where your body shuts down, and it can literally shut down to the point where it does not remember how to breathe. It doesn't remember how to make the flow of your blood go correctly. So when you're a first responder, you're always checking for shock, so that if somebody's got a bleed out in their leg, certainly you're attuning to that, but you're also watching, because the leg might not be a life-threatening situation. But if they go into shock, if their body freezes, it means I'm going to shut things down. And so that freeze response is a very exhausting response to be in. It's a very precarious response to be in.
Mm. Gosh, that like my heart goes out to that listener, because when you're saying that, like, it is that paralyzed, disconnected, trapped feeling. I mean, that's what I'm hearing as you're explaining this, and really just an immobilization, right? And again, why does the body do that?
So before I answer that last question, I want to
Yeah,
touch on what you said, Lindsay.
go
I
ahead.
want our listeners to understand that many people are coming from a place of CPTSD. And those symptoms aren't just, freeze is just one of the many symptoms. Individuals with CPTSD have a lot of trouble sleeping. They have a lot of trouble taking the thoughts that they know in a moment might not be accurate, and unpacking those and get an accurate read on a situation. They may be overcome with anxiety in a space that wasn't anxiety raising before. They have a wide range usually in their emotions. So a person stuck in freeze might all of a sudden have a really strong anger reaction because they moved into the fight and then they came back to the freeze. So I call that frenzy. You go amp up and you shut down. But what I want to suggest to listeners who aren't experiencing themselves, you are in contact with individuals. They're your volunteer buddy. They're your neighbor. They're your colleague at work. And you may be walking them through some directions, and you're both are on the same page, and then you walk away and you can see that they're a bit flustered and they're saying, I'm so sorry, I knew I should have understood everything, but I forgot the sequence of events that we're supposed to do. Have kindness, have compassion. They're one step away from freezing and maybe not showing up again because they are shamed unnecessarily by their triggers. But the triggers are shaming often. I have never treated somebody with CPTSD that didn't come in with a felt sense of shame, like I am responsible for this, and why am I not dealing with it better? So just an awareness that if somebody is not sleeping, we all know that we're not thinking straight. So just on that one symptom of sleep disruptions, they're going to have trouble focusing. They're going to have trouble reaching out. They're going to have trouble discerning whether or not you're a safe person for them.
And yet, if it's my volunteer buddy, if it's, somebody that I'm interacting with, I likely may not know what's gone on in this person's past, right? I may not know that there's been complex trauma that's causing them to respond in this way. And so it makes me just think, like, less judgment, more compassion. Like, we may not know and we may not understand why they're showing up in that way, but we also don't know their story and the entirety of their story. So again, honoring that we all have a story, and our body's ability to try to adapt to an overwhelmed nervous system is our body trying to help us, right? But to everybody else, it might seem frustrating or inappropriate, or, that response seemed very off considering what was said, right? But what's going on inside is often far more than what the naked eye can see.
Yeah, and let me maybe help the person struggling with this, the person that asked the question. I want to help possibly remove some or hopefully all of the shame around it by giving you a little bit of background. Why are those triggers so intense? Why does your worldview not seem to quite fit what's going on? So when those traumatic events happened, well, let me just back up. We have two parts of our memory. We have a part that's called declarative memory. So if Lindsay said, "Hey, Kathy, what are you doing? What did you do last weekend?" I would say, "Well, I went to a booth for Therapy Utah. I went out to eat. It was a great weekend." I can declare, I can share with Lindsay what I did. So that's declarative memory. Non-declarative memory is our unconscious. So our unconscious is, I walk by a meat counter and I'm drawn to talking to the older guy. This truly happened to me a few days ago. There's an older gentleman behind the meat counter. He came around to talk to me. It was very sweet. It was very tender. I walked away realizing, man, I miss my dad. 35 years as a meat cutter. A meat department is a lovely place for me. So that was my non-declarative memory. I was feeling connected to this stranger, this gentleman who was so kind, for an unconscious reason until I attached it to what I know about, my relationship with my dad. So when a traumatic event happens, the part of your brain that holds your emotion, holds that fear response, it's called the amygdala, that amps up like a Christmas tree. Full on emotional reaction to what's happening. So if somebody was sexually assaulted and their response was freeze, they would be immobilized, completely immobilized. That reaction would be so big, the fear would be so strong that it took the ability away to move. Now, at the same time, we have this other declarative memory that I mentioned. That, again, a declarative memory is about when, where, and who. That part of your brain, researchers have found, completely shuts down in a traumatic event. Now, why is that important? What does that matter? That part of your brain that's the declarative, the hippocampus, shuts down. Why it's important is because when those triggers come up, that part of your brain that's shut down, it's shutting down when the trigger comes up. So it doesn't know that it's not happening right now in the spot with you. And the part of your brain that was extremely activated in the moment, that lights up like it did in the moment. So what I'm saying is that your brain believes it's happening to you right now because it has no other evidence.
Isn't that amazing? As you're saying that, I think that is, boy, that is a good reason for self-compassion and compassion with others. I mean, that alone, if nothing else, that our brain truly doesn't know if this is a historical event or if this is happening in the moment. And so that response, although it may seem way blown out of proportion for the situation that's happening, it's actually our brilliant brains trying to protect us. That's all it's trying to do.
And it's like the example of a vet when a car backfires and he jumps on the ground to hide. I can't imagine a person that would mock him. I really can't, because it's evident that that sound that sounded like an explosion triggered him to drop on the floor and hide because there was danger. So it's really critical to understand that your brain has decided, it has made a decision that the world is dangerous. If you have CPTSD, then your worldview is there is danger everywhere. That new relationship, likely dangerous. The one I'm in, likely dangerous. That opportunity for promotion, likely dangerous. So again, if you're with somebody that has this life experience of repetitive trauma, don't be offended if they don't connect quickly, or they seem maybe a little bit reticent to share their story. Their brain is telling them, look, you've got to play it safe. The world is dangerous. And so if you think about it from that lens, CPTSD is really a memory disorder. It really is a memory disorder. My memory is disordered, thinking that things from my past are happening right now. And that is a significant disorder.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes so much sense when you lay it out that way, right? When I can think of it from a trauma perspective, then it makes so much sense. And instead of saying, oh, I'm so broken or this person is broken, it's actually so adaptive. The brain is adapting to it's just too much, right? So, what are
Right.
some initial steps someone can take to start feeling more safe in their body? So, when they're in that freeze response, as this listener said, what are some steps that they could take?
So first, you're going to want to take small steps. If you've been struggling with this and you know that that's your diagnosis, you've probably been told that really noticing your breathing is helpful. I agree with that. Absolutely. But that can feel overwhelming. It's like I can't take deep breath. I don't, thinking that I have to take deep breaths raises my anxiety. So
Mhm.
when you consider noticing your breathing, truly, just notice it. Don't worry if your breaths are deep or not.
Mm.
Just know, oh, I breathe mostly through my nose. Oh, I breathe and I exhale for a little longer. Just notice it. So, as you get some insights into what will help, make sure you package them in a level that works for where you are right now. The other thing, Lindsay, is um, really to help your brain uh, rewire its memories. Let me say this. In the medical world, they have an expression. They say pain lies. Doctors, nurses will tell you somebody comes in and their shoulders hurt, and come to find out they're having a heart attack.
Mm.
Somebody comes in and says, my leg is just aching, but it's actually stems from a problem in their lower back. So when a patient describes their pain, the doctor is really paying attention to their descriptions, to their symptoms, and also being aware that the source of the pain is generally lying. So we have to
Mm.
figure out what's really, really causing the pain. So
Mm.
if we just go and try to solve for the symptoms, and there's a lot of good work that can be done, such as noticing your breathing. But really what we want to capture, what's the source of the pain?
Mm.
So I'll give you an example. My friend just told me a couple days ago, she went to the doctor, a physical therapist. For years, she's had trouble with her thumb and her elbow, just pain. Just it flares up and she's in pain. And she's tried everything. She said, I've gone to every doctor. They don't know. They can't fix it. The pain comes back. She went to this physical therapist, and immediately the physical therapist said, have you ever been in a car wreck? Oh, yeah. 12 years ago, I was in a car wreck. Was it significant? Did you have whiplash? Oh, yeah. My whiplash was severe. And what had happened is the physical therapist had been examining her neck. And she says that whiplash is so tight. It has caused such tightness. It's choking off your thyroid. And it's in and the position of that caused by the whiplash is actually what's causing the pain in your thumb and in your elbow. So I'm going
Wow.
to work the source of pain, but I'm going to tell you, your thumb and elbow, they're going to hurt. They're going to hurt more for a bit until we get the source gone. This is going to hurt more. Trust me on this, please. Let me do what I need to do on the source of the pain, and it's going to get better. And so that's one of the reasons that we are a trauma informed clinic, because we don't just go after what the person is saying. Here's my pain, fix this. We take a step back and we say, let's see if we can figure out what's the real source of the pain, because we can clean up the symptoms. We can do a lot of work on managing,
Mm.
but ultimately, if we don't get back to where it's coming from, so somebody with CPTSD, truly the source of the pain is your system saying the entire world is dangerous. If
Yeah.
danger is everywhere, then I can minimize my trauma responses. I can really work to minimize them, but I'll never be free of the thought that
Yeah.
the world is dangerous. And so a symptom will come up.
That makes a lot of sense. And, you know, as you're saying that, I think you had to have somebody that knew what they were doing, that they weren't just looking at the thumb and saying the thumb is the problem, but they were saying there's something else going on. And let's look back in the history and see where this problem lies. It's not just the thumb, right? I think that same thing is there's behaviors that are manifesting themselves, right? And it might be, you know, it might be depression, anxiety, whatever. But really, there's something else. That's a symptom of the problem. There's something else going on that's informing those type of feelings, right? And it's the same principle, which is exactly what you said. Why we are a trauma-informed clinic is one of the reasons why it's so valuable is we don't just look at the behaviors and say, okay, here's some behavioral modification. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. But we say, these are the behaviors that need to be addressed. But then let's get to the root cause. Let's see what really happened and really try to do some work around that, because behavioral activation matters. But also we've got to get clear about what the root cause is here, right? So when you say that, what's the source of the pain? What are some treatments that you would recommend as you know, different therapeutic interventions that might help get back to some of those root cause problems?
You know, Lindsay, I think we need to commit to doing an entire podcast on IFS, internal family systems, because that particular modality, for me, I love it. I use it quite frequently. It's such a beautiful modality to get to the root. And then I think we should have some of our other therapists that use ART, EMDR, trauma-informed CBT. We need to have them on and walk through those. All of those benefit somebody that's really looking at finding out and discovering that they have CPTSD. So I'd say let's take those and do another podcast. But some immediate things.
We could do an episode on every single one of those, right? As you're talking. I personally do EMDR, I do ART, which again, people are like, what is that, right? And we will do episodes on all of those things because they are important to understand. And I will just say from a personal perspective, I had done therapy myself. And until I did some of this trauma work in EMDR, I did not realize there was some residual things that I needed to work through. And doing some of this somatic work, meaning body work, that happened in EMDR, I was blown away at some of the actual relief that I had felt that, frankly, I had not found in talk therapy for a lot of years. And so I'm with you. I think doing a podcast episode on a lot of those interventions that you mentioned, those are actually my 3 favorite ones personally that I use in my practice, are really wildly beneficial and also evidence-based as gold standard for trauma treatment. So yes, we will do that. But anything that comes to your mind that might be beneficial aside from those.
Yeah. Speaking to this listener in particular, and honestly, just asking the question is I don't know how much courage it took. I don't know how much faith that you had to have that there might be an answer today. I just want to tell you that you're worth it. And I really am grateful for the question. So here's just a few things that you might be able to consider implementing even today. 3 C's. 1, remember, we're talking about a brain that says the whole world's dangerous. And I hope that our listener has had opportunities to see that this part of the world is not, this friendship is not, this hobby is not, this space that I can retreat to is not. I hope there's evidence in your life that there is safety. So I'm just going to say the first C is a chat with yourself, answering the question, what is real right now? And the reason I suggest that question is since our brain is making this statement, and it's powerfully making this statement, it does not accept that it's wrong at any level yet. So it is solid. I mean, if it was a betting brain, it would bet on red with 100% confidence, you know? So
Mm.
it is absolutely married to the idea that this world is not safe.
Mm.
So just start a chat with yourself. What is real right now? Well, I'm in my car and I'm driving and it feels safe to listen to the podcast right now. I hope it's introducing some safety. Maybe when you take a shower, it feels safe to feel the warmth of the water. Maybe there's a walk that you have, a trail. Maybe when you're with in a, you know, being a parenting volunteer and you're in class and you're with a bunch of 3-year-olds and it feels safe to have that interaction. Whatever it is, ask yourself frequently through the day, just chat with yourself. What is real right now?
Mm.
Where's my safe place? These kind of questions allow your brain to consider, wait a minute, wait a minute. Actually, what is real right now is that my husband and I had a great conversation. We sat down and we had a great conversation. That's real. That's real. So it's great to write those things down. You're starting to create a list of moments, and they will likely just be moments when you feel a felt sense of safety.
And it's what
So
that is doing is getting them back into the present moment. Like, this is real, this is present. Come back to the here and now.
yeah, and you're making it. Remember, if it's true that this is a memory disorder, now you're forming new
New
memories.
memories. Yep.
As you form those, and if you repeat this question, when you first start feeling that anxiety and you interject what is real right now, you're disrupting the memory that's coming with that old emotion.
Mm.
So, and that fear that starts to rise and begins with anxiety, if you can ask yourself that question, then it's going to disrupt the memory and it's going to bring new information so that your systems can say, you know, I started to get anxious, and then I remembered what was true right now is I can leave this meeting if it's uncomfortable. That's true for me. I
Mm.
can walk down the street and take a breather during my lunch break. That's real right now. So we're trying to disrupt the memory.
Nice. I love that. Disrupt the memory with new memories that are real right now, right? I think of grounding techniques. Okay, what can I feel? What can I touch? What can I taste? What can I see? Again, what is it? It's orienting our brain to the current moment, right? Not in the past, but right here and now. Good. What would the other two C's be that you mentioned?
So the second one I would say is get curious about anything.
Mm.
Because we're talking about a brain that goes, look, I don't need to be curious. It's not safe. But get curious about anything. Look at how somebody look at a newspaper article, and whether you agree with it or not, just get curious about the individual that wrote it. I wonder what their viewpoint is on this particular article. Is it in the article?